It's not obvious. Poor Sarah's very nervous. She's so nervous.
Yeah. It is now. Something appears to get it. I mean, I just didn't bother.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. How are you? Good morning. My name is Paul Wiedefeld. I'm Chairman of the Maryland Transportation Authority Board. Today is Thursday, May 30th, 2024, and hereby call the meeting of the MDTA Board to order at 9:02 a.m. This morning, we're having our meeting in person at MDTA headquarters, and in accordance with live streaming law, this meeting is being live streamed on MDTA Board webpage. I would like to say welcome to the members of the staff who are with us today. As a reminder, I ask that anyone who is in the room with us this morning to refrain from speaking unless you are presenting or answering a question to avoid background noise on the live stream. I would also like to ask the members to speak loudly and clearly so those in the back of the room are able to hear you. Also, please say your name when motioning or seconding to help with the meeting minutes. There are no members of the public and no elected officials and no media who have pre-registered to comment at this morning's meeting. For those who are watching this meeting via the live stream, we have posted materials for today's meeting on the MDTA Board webpage so that you can follow along if you would like. We will now begin with today's agenda. The first agenda item is to approve session meetings minutes from April 25th, 2024.
So moved. Mario.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Second item is the closed session board minutes of April 25th, 2024.
Motion to approve.
Second. Member Carroll.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. The third item is the approval of the open session meeting minutes of May 13th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The fourth agenda item is Board Resolution 2402, Board Operating Policy, Proposed Amendments for Tolling Contract Modifications. Our Secretary.
Good morning, Chairman and members. I'm Kim Millender, Principal Counsel. In follow-up to conversations at the Finance and Capital Committees, I'm here to present to you an amendment to the Board Operating Policy. Specifically, this amendment, which is outlined in your draft materials, would require the approval or award or any modification of the MDTA's tolling contracts to come before the board as an approval item. And this is a clarification, members. You'll recall we've had some discussions whether they actually require an approval or just a notification and concurrence. And based on board discussion, we are presenting this to clarify that it will require an approval moving forward. And this applies to the MDTA's tolling contracts to create that specificity. This was presented to both Finance and Capital Committees, and they concurred and recommended it be presented to the full board for approval. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions or comments?
I just have a comment, Mr. Chairman. I think it's certainly more work involved, but I think it's a good move. I support it.
Any other questions or comments? I agree. Okay. Do I hear a motion?
This is Mario. I'll move for approval.
Second? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 5, the approval of Board Resolution 2403, Board Committees. Mr. Gardner?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is to obtain approval from the MDTA Board for Resolution 2403 to reestablish the Capital Committee and establish a new Finance and Administration Committee. For Board Resolution 1009, the MDTA Board formally established the Capital and Finance Committees as standing committees of the Board in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. For the Board Resolution 1405, the Board established a quorum requirements for each committee in compliance with the Open Meeting Act, and Resolution 2403 confirms the Capital Committee as a permanent standing committee. and the issues are to be reviewed by the committee. The resolution also replaces former Finance Committee and Human Resources Committee with a new Finance and Administration Committee. This will take the responsibilities of what we had in a Human Resources Committee and make it into the monthly Finance and Administration Committee meetings. This was done to streamline board operations and also to make sure that we were being as transparent as possible on all our matters considered on the Human Resources side.
Any questions or discussion? Is there a motion to approval?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Agenda item 6, 2 contract awards, construction management inspection services. The first one?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Sarah, Director of Procurement. The first contract is MDTA 2022-02A. This is the final 6 of our A&E construction management and inspection services contracts. We are recommending award to 6 contractors for the services of CMI. The consultant shall provide professional CMI services related to supplementing and supporting the construction phase of the MDTA Consolidated Transportation Program. The first contract is awarded to Greenman Pedersen, Inc. for $16 million. The second, Rummel, Klepper, and Cobb, again for $16 million. WSP, $14 million. Whitman, Reckart, and Associates, $14 million. Johnson, Marmoran, and Thompson, $14 million. And AECom Technical Services for $11 million. There was a 26% MVE goal, and all of the firms met or exceeded the goal. All of them met, and RK&K and WSP exceeded at 28%. There was also a VSBE goal of 1%, and all firms met that commitment. There was no protest received on these contracts. The duration of the contracts will be 5 years. NTP is anticipated for July the 1st. Any questions?
Any questions or comments?
This is Member Ganjimi. I move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. The second item is generational electronic toll collection. Donna?
Thank you. Settle in. Under the new board operating policy, any contracts are required for a board approval related to tolling. So this will be our first one, right out of the gate.
Very good.
Thank you. So we are here to seek MDTA Board's approval for modification number 3 to MA 2868 with Transport LP for the 3rd generation electronic toll collection customer service center systems and services. There are 4 key takeaways. The first is of this modification number 3, it's needed to continue to process and collect toll revenue. It's primarily driven by increased Easy Pass and pay-by-plate accounts, AKA pre-registered accounts, and video toll transactions. It will not require an operating budget amendment or impact to the MDTA's ability to maintain its financial standards, and it is retroactive at the Board of Public Works because approval was not obtained prior to the March 1st, 2024, when the beginning of Phase 4 operations and maintenance work began. In summary, modification 3 will add $50.3 million and give back $1.2 million in unused funds from modification number 1 for a total modification amount of $49 million. As a result, the new contract will be $357,012,012,569.56. A chart depicting this breakdown is found on page 5 of your item. Like modifications 1 and 2, the increase in funding is largely due to the conversion from cash to all electronic tolling to correct an error in pre-registered account or Easy Pass quantities in the original RFP, and to provide for additional customer communications and services. This modification number 3 is necessary to adjust the operations and maintenance line item quantities to allow the MDTA to collect toll revenue. The expenses are accounted for in MDTA's operating budget and does not impact its ability to comply with its financial standards. Additionally, modification number 3 addresses the urgent need for additional funding and 3 contract requirement changes to protect the state's interests that include increasing the performance bond, amending the punch list timeframe, and amending the data storage requirements from 1 year to 4 years. A subsequent modification to document all remaining contract requirement changes is forthcoming. I should emphasize that this modification number 3 is not related to system design, development, implementation, or testing, or the phase 1 through 3 work. Instead, this mod relates to only phase 4, operations and maintenance items that began on March 1st, 2024. As relayed in the background contract framework section of your item, the RFP scope of work and financials were broken down into 6 separate phases, plus authorization for potential system changes, communications, marketing, related expenses, a continuous improvement program, and formal partnering. The contract phases fall into system design, development, testing, and implementation, known as phases 1 through 3, operations and maintenance, known as phases 4 and 5, and phase out, which is phase 6. The RFP financials for phase 4, operations and maintenance, consist of a base term of 6 years. They were broken down into 3 two-year blocks, years 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 5 and 6, as described on page 2 of your item. The financial proposal and contract value was based on the estimated quantities determined by the MDTA at the time the RFP was prepared in fiscal year 2015 timeframe, and the unit prices proposed by TransCore. Together, the quantities and the unit prices were extended to determine the contractual spending authority per line item. When the RFP was advertised, all electronic tolling was limited to the I-95 Express Lane and Inter-County Connector. MDTA's estimated quantities did not assume converting all facilities to AET, which was appropriate since converting other facilities to AET was expected to occur at some point in the future. Line item quantities for pre-registered account management, or EasyPass, and pay-by-plate accounts were also significantly understated. A quantities comparison from March 2015 to March of 2024 can be found on page 3 of your item. Because of this error in these quantities, the MDTA must conduct contract modifications to add additional funding to Phase 4 operations and maintenance work. A BPW approval is required to reallocate these funding from one line item to another when the cumulative effect exceeds $50,000. A breakdown of all modifications to date, including Mod 3, is found on page 4 of your item. Modification number 3 will retroactively increase the operations and maintenance line items for years 3 and 4 in the amount of $49,159,268.19, as depicted on page 5 of your item. The increases fall into 4 categories: pre-registered account management, video toll related, customer services and communications, and the performance bond increase. A modification is retroactive when the contract scope or requirements materially change, or financial authorization per line item is not sufficient to pay for services prior to obtaining the Board of Public Works approval. TransCore began providing operations and maintenance year 3 and 4 services on March 1st, 2024. BPW approval will be sought on approximately August 28th, 2024. That's a summary of your item, and we'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Any questions, comments? Members of Paris?
I have a couple of questions. Just taking a look at page 3, I think the diagram and the analysis on page 3, I think is very revealing. I mean, if a snapshot of March 2015 and how, I think you explained, I mean, that from going, even we hit the pandemic, we didn't know that, I guess, when we bid the contract, built the RFP. But then taking a look at the difference between March 2015 and 2024, just I think it was a good illustration of what's going on here. The other question I have, I didn't see, I saw the numbers, but the increase in the bonding, can you explain that a little bit further?
So the original contract amount was bonded at 100%. We did modify the contract moving forward to require that every annual bond will include the original amount and any modifications.
Okay, so part of this is,
100%, yes.
the increase is covered at this
Yes.
point. That's,
Yes.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Mr. Webster?
Just related to the subsequent modification for the documentation, can you just give a little more color around that, including just clarifying that that's not going to have any financial
I can
implications?
take that one.
Okay.
I can answer that. So the next modification won't be a financial model, it'll just be a reconciliation of the requirements of the original RFP with what the system's actually doing right now. So we have to match the written requirement to the system, and any differences we need, any changes or deletions, things that we don't need anymore, has to be included in a mod, because it's a contract change. So, we've gone to, there's 2,397 requirements total, and we're down to about 400 reconciling, making sure that the system matches the written requirement. When it doesn't, when there's a mismatch, then we either have to change the system to match the requirement, or we change the requirement to match the system. It's whatever is best for the business, I guess. So that mod will be just for that reason, just to reconcile the requirements, and it's part of the closeout of the project.
So there's no expected financial.
Yeah, there's no expected financial impact for that mod. It's strictly reconciling contract requirements.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more, I guess, an observation or comment. The more work I did in this area, looking at this, the more it was evident that it's very complex. You have different disciplines here, in managing this. You have the operations side, the tolling side, you have the procurement side, you have the technology side, and then you have the financial, the finance side. So there are a lot of moving parts, and I guess when you look at the team that's assembled for that, and you have to work together. It's quite an undertaking, but just an observation.
From the beginning, this project has had to be a team effort across the board, whether it's operations, finance, IT, executive leadership. It's had to be a joint effort. To the extent possible, everybody tries to stay in their respective lanes. Different individuals within our organization have different expertise in tolling, and it's a composite effort of everyone. These contracts, if you think about it, they're our lifeblood. These contracts are what allow us to generate the revenue to take care of the critical infrastructure that we provide our communities. So it has to be a team effort here.
Just one other question. It's more of a technical matter. So this is retro to March. So I guess that's when the contract terminated. So we have to make this retro, and then this is not going to be approved by the Board of Public Works until August. Is that fine? How are we going to do this going forward? Is it going to be done more in advance so we're not retroactively approving?
So we will not, when we have received invoices just recently from Transport, the line item for, they're called additional registered accounts, that line item, we will short pay that line item, pay all the other line items because we have sufficient funding right now, and work with Transcore, and as soon as the modification is approved, we will pay that line item when the funding is available on that particular line item.
Okay. Any other questions? Then just really more two thoughts. One is obviously with the underestimated quantities, to making sure that with QA/QC process in place to sort of have other sets of eyes look at numbers. And I know that you work on that, so but please put more focus on that. And I know you have, but this was several years ago. But let's make sure we're doing that. And then I think in preparation probably for the Board of Public Works is sort of teasing out how much of this was that we went. How much of it was the underestimated portion, and how much of it's tied to the AETs on the other facilities, just to give a sense of scale, because again, that wasn't incorporated at the beginning, so that's going to be a large portion of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the looking back at the, that quantity error that was done in the RFP, we probably need to figure out how, putting in charge one person on, next time we do this type of thing. I think engineering probably has that figured out, maybe on these contracts, we need one person just be constantly checking what the numbers are, if they fit with anything else, an assumption that has changed in a document. Because none of us can really answer the question as to why it happened then, but if you would have had one person, as that detailed task, that probably would have made it a lot easier for everybody. With Board Public Works, they've seen that error before in the previous bonds. Staff has asked about it. I think they'll be ready for it. I mean, this time it's 24 million for that part. It was a slightly different number last time. And in January of 26, we'll be back for those next 2 years. So we'll do that non-financial, but we're going to be back to the board and to the BPW, not retroactive, in 26 to do that kind of catch up again and whatever else. So you'll see this again. I just want to make sure that's clear, but it's not going to be for.
Appreciate it. All right, any other questions? If not, is there a motion for approval?
I will make a motion.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you're chairman.
I will make a
Finance
motion
Committee. Go
that
ahead,
we
boss.
approve this.
Finance, not the chairman. Go ahead. I'll second, Member Cox.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you very much. Agenda item number 7, procurement report on all open contracts. Donna?
Thank you. My final item is a report of our open contracts as required by the operating policy. Right now, we have 221 contracts in the amount of $2.9 billion. They're broken down by 22 memorandums of understanding for $24.5 million, 73 architect and engineering contracts for $803 million, 42 construction contracts for $1.8 billion, 29 maintenance contracts for $36 million, 22 services contracts for $40 million, and 33 IT contracts at $155 million. The total contract value was $2.9 million. We've paid $1.8 million. We've obligated $668 million for open contract balance of $420 million. And Natalie, I'll provide you these numbers in an email.
Any questions or discussion? Thank you very much, Donna.
Thank you very much.
Agenda item number 8 is approval of the MDTA 2024 strategic plan.
Good morning.
Good morning.
For the record, I'm Sarah Clifford, the Director of Office of Policy, Innovation, and Performance, and I have Chris Paris here with me, the manager of the office. He was instrumental in this process for updating the strategic plan. I will be providing an overview of the process MDTA underwent for updating the strategic plan, seeking the board's approval for the 2024 strategic plan. The plan was reviewed and input was provided by the Office of Planning and Capital Programming at TSO. The plan was also reviewed and approved at the May Capital and Finance Committees. MDTA's existing strategic plan and accompanying roadmap were developed several years ago in 2019 with additional updates in 2020 and 2021. The time had come for the agency to update the plan, and the timing also aligned with the new administration. In May 2023, a strategic advance was held at MDOT Harry Hughes with MDTA employees in attendance. During the advance, a SWOT analysis was completed, which helped identify key themes and focus areas. Drafting the plan throughout the strategic planning process, it was evident that MDTA's greatest strength is the people and team of MDTA. We wanted to make sure that all MDTA employees were involved with the development of the plan. To help achieve this, we asked employees to vote on an MDTA mission and vision statement that they believe best represented MDTA. A survey was sent to all MDTA employees and over 200 responded. From June 23 through December of 23, work sessions were held with senior leadership during designated meetings devoted on the strategic planning process. The planning process helped engage stakeholders across the organization in defining a comprehensive assessment of what our strategic plan should look like. The new strategic plan is one that envisions how the MDTA can deliver on the governor's commitment to building an efficient and equitable transportation system that harnesses economic growth in our region, drives billions in new investment, protects our environment and our neighbors, and connects peoples with employees. employers. The new strategic plan aligns with the MTP 2050. MDTA is dedicated to advancing MDOT's commitment to working in partnership with the communities it serves, promoting equity, environmental protection, and sustainable communities, while connecting people to the places they live, work, and play. Each of the MDTA strategic plan elements align and directly support the guiding principle and goals within the MTP. One example is MDTA's goal to modernize the transportation network, which is built upon the MTP's guiding principle of modernization and supports the goals to deliver system quality and enhance safety and security. The plan is people and team focused. The plan will be posted on the MDTA intranet and internet, easily accessible for MDTA employees and partners. There are 4 goals, 24 objectives, and 16 key focus areas and initiatives within the strategic plan. The plan lays the foundation for MDTA. The plan contains a roadmap for MDTA which spans 3 years, 2024 to 2027. The roadmap will be a living document and updated as needed. Our roadmap was first introduced in 2022 and has helped MDTA employees see how their jobs directly connect with MDTA's strategic plan and MDTA. After approval, the MDTA will roll out the strategic plan through a multi-step approach. The plan will be posted on the intranet and internet. Hard copies will be made available at each facility, and our office will also host a lunch and learn, which will be recorded and posted for those who are unable to attend. The strategic plan and roadmap will be incorporated into the new employee orientation, and posters of the mission, vision, and values and roadmap will be posted throughout the facilities. I'd like to thank Executive Director Gartner and the Leadership Roundtable for their support and input during the plan. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions?
Well, if I could,
Mr. Executive Director?
I just want to thank Sarah and her team for taking this on and doing a great job and kind of having to adjust to leadership changes in the process and being flexible throughout. Chris had this before Sarah came back to the MDTA, and I think they've done a great job. Had a few comments in the committees, I believe, but had to make some adjustments in this last month or so. But I really appreciate the effort of both them and the leadership team here at MDTA to put this together.
Thank you. No, I had the opportunity to actually be part of it in December, and it was very, very open discussion and lively discussion, which I thought was really good. And I think, Bruce, with you coming on board and accepting sort of some of the previous work and building off of that, I think is important too. So thank you for that. All right, with that, yes, Mr. Rosen.
Just one question, and this is great work, really is. With regard to it being a living document, how is that going to occur? How is it going to be revisited so that we can make changes and enhancements to this over time?
So our roadmap, which is viewable on page 5 and 6 of the document you have, we'll review that every few years to see how we've accomplished those goals, key focus areas, and remove the ones we've accomplished and add new ones as they become our focuses. So just because there's 16 focus areas, that doesn't mean that's the only thing that MDTA is doing, obviously, but those are our big focus ones, and we'll be, I don't want to say creating a business plan, but working on action plans and items to support those key focus areas. And as we accomplish them, we'll take them off and add new ones on.
Can I follow up on that? Of course. Just, you said every couple of years, but I'm guessing it's more frequent than that.
So yeah, I mean, we'll be looking at them I would say like quarterly, and then
Okay.
doing an update, a more comprehensive update every 2 to 3 years.
Got it. Perfect. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I know we had discussed in committee, just considering multimodal nature, and then in your mission here, you said equitable transportation. I think just keeping that consideration in mind, like you had mentioned, as we move forward is key for our strategy as technology changes and needs change. So I'm glad that you put together a document that was comprehensive. Thank you.
Very good. Anything else? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Agenda item number 9, update on fiscal year 2023 single audit.
I didn't hear single audit. No, sorry. This item is, as part of our annual audit, we have a single audit, an A133 audit. And this past year, we had one audit finding. It had to do with a federal report involving the Belvedere interchange being submitted both timely and subject to supervisory review. Procedures have been drafted. The reports were submitted, and auditors have accepted the response. We have things in place that it won't repeat in the future. This was a, procedural issue, not a material type of issue. And part of our operating policy requires reporting this out to the board. So that's the reason for the item, as an update.
Any questions? We've done it? Okay, thank you, Debbie, appreciate it. Agenda item number 10, approval of the quarterly review of investment strategy and benchmarks. Alan? Good morning.
This item was discussed in greater detail at the May 9th Finance Committee meeting, and the committee members support continuation of the current investment strategies for all accounts. Some of the key points are that for the trailing 12-month period, investments conform to investment policy limitations. Our portfolio structuring by account adhered to the board-approved strategy, and no changes in strategy or benchmarks are recommended for the long-term reserves. Our strategy should remain consistent despite short-term return volatility associated with the rising rate environment. Our trust agreement and investment policy prescribe a matched funding approach for our specific purpose accounts, including our operating monies, our debt service accounts, and our capital or construction accounts. As always, these short-term accounts are highly liquid, and these investments are matched to the cash flow needs. So the agency has either this match funding approach or a total return duration targeted approach for certain categories of accounts. So of the $1.7 billion portfolio at the end of March, $1.3 billion was invested on a matched funding basis. The remaining portion, the $401 million approximately, was managed for total return, and those are the monies held in the two long-term reserves, the general and the M&O reserve. It's worth noting that the total portfolio value at the end of March was temporarily elevated. We had about $720 million of bond proceeds. We had sold bonds for a refinancing transaction in February. We received the proceeds at the beginning of March, and then we paid off the bonds at the beginning of April. So on March 31st, the portfolio was elevated by about $717 million, and on April 5th, $748 million went out to bondholders. So that was a temporary elevation. For those longer-term reserves, those portfolios exhibit greater volatility, but they benefit from higher average annual returns. Management does not attempt to time market rate changes, and I think that's demonstrated in the consistent investment strategy. So the general account investment strategy has not changed for many years, and the smaller M&O reserves strategy has been consistent since 2020. The general account, which is approximately $350 million, is benchmarked to a composite index of 1 to 5 year bullet agencies. The investment maturities in that particular portfolio are staggered from 3 months to 5 years, and the effective duration is approximately 3. The smaller M&O reserve represents about 3% of the assets under management, and that's benchmarked to 1 to 13 year Treasury strip index. And the effective maturity of that is approximately 7.5 years, and that portfolio is structured with laddered maturities from 6 months out to 15 years. So the investment committee is seeking an approval of the continuation of all the investment strategies and benchmarks for the current quarter.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Cox.
Good report, Alan. Let me ask you, what are the interest rates basically you're getting on the investments at this point? You have any, I guess it's spread, but what do you think the average is at this point?
Yeah, so that, we go into a lot of detail at the finance committee level, but, you know, it's interesting, the curve is inverted right now, and it has been for some time, so the short-term investments in the capital, construction, bond service accounts, you know, they're earning 5-ish%. So on a total return basis, you know, we reported out for the bond service accounts are among the highest, they're over 5%. Money market funds are yielding over 5%. We have a lot invested in the Maryland local government investment pool. And normally, for the capital account, we would stagger maturities out, you know, over several months to try to match up with projected spending. But if you go out a year, you know, rates are lower than they are for overnight investments. So we have more than we typically would, and we run kind of break-even analysis constantly trying to figure out whether we should stagger some of those maturities out. But the yields are so compelling on overnight instruments. So to answer your question, the short-term money is the match funding. You know, they're earning approximately 5%. The longer-term reserves, the two indices and the weighted average yield are just under 5%. They're around 4.8, 4.9%. But because of the return volatility as rates have risen, you know, for the trailing, you know, 12-month period, those two portfolios combined earned around 3%. It was around 2.9%. If you think about it on a forward-looking basis, our expected return, you know, despite that volatility, is close to 5%. But it could be negative, it could be
Right.
positive. But the other thing that we've benefited from is that we had a couple of years of negative returns because of the mark-to-market. But now, with yields being so much higher, the accruals are offsetting a lot of any potential negative price movements. So, you know, we'd still have a negative return, but it's more likely to be positive going forward. And I think over multi-years, we can expect, you know, a return around 5%.
Very good.
Regardless of what happens to rates.
I guess, yeah, what happens to the rates in the future, obviously with the Fed's, you know, predictions were they're coming down, but obviously they've stayed basically the same, and we'll just see what the future holds. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I was just following up on that. You spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the Fed is going to do, or you just watch and react to it when it happens?
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I recognize, and I think it's widely recognized, I don't know what the Fed's going to do, and the Fed's own predictions of what it's going to do
They don't know either.
are constantly wrong. You know, they say they're going to cut, they don't cut. They say they're going to raise, they don't raise. You know, we're watching the inflation information. Inflation's coming down. The economy is really strong. Employment is super, you know, high, or unemployment is very low. So there's this resiliency, and there was the recession that didn't come from the rate hikes. So the Fed's been on hold a lot longer than was expected. So, you know, each time we get cash flows in, you know, we look at short-term money market instruments and say, wow, they're really compelling. If we were to invest out 6 months or a year, we would accept lower yields. That requires some forecast of what the Fed's going to do. How quickly would the Fed have to cut rates and rates decline for us to be indifferent between, like, buying a 6-month investment or a 1-year investment versus sitting in an overnight money market mutual fund at currently a higher yield? So we don't tend to try to forecast what the Fed's going to do. For those longer-term portfolios, you know, we did a lot of analysis, and we brought it to the Finance Committee and Board some years ago. We looked at multi-year returns for longer-term portfolios and compared them and looked at the volatility, and we recognized, you know, we're accepting, you know, this extreme volatility in the short run, but over multi-year periods, those longer portfolios have outperformed. So even though the general account's yield is lower than we could get in an overnight investment, we would expect that return to outperform, you know, basically leaving money sitting in cash. So that's why we have those long-term strategies, and we accept that volatility, and we don't forecast yeah, unfortunately, where rates are headed.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have just a comment. From the Finance Committee standpoint, there was some discussion, obviously, always good discussion. I guess as it relates to the current investment strategy, there's an alignment, it seems it was, with the MDTA leadership, the investment committee. Our consultants are on board with this. And that's why I think the Finance Committee voted unanimously to stay the course with the current investment strategy. So I just want to say that for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, with that ringing endorsement, I'll make a motion for approval.
Is there a second?
Second. Member Carroll?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 11, third quarter operating budget comparison.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Jeffrey Brown, Budget Director of the MDTA. I'm here in front of the board today to provide an update for the third quarter year-to-date budget versus actual performance for fiscal year 2024. As of March 31st, we have spent 62% of the budget compared to a target of 72%. The primary drivers are personnel vacancies that are partially offset by higher overtime, higher insurance premiums due to market pressures, and lower expenses for objects that typically have most of their costs in the fourth quarter of the fiscal year. Object 3 is over budget at an 80% spend rate, but this is due to a one-time payment for the state radio system invoice. This is pure timing. We expect this to come back to budget. Object 10 is over budget at 90% spend due to a purchasing system error. This line item is expected to return to budget once we complete the fix of the issue. Object 13 is over budget at 154% due to the higher insurance premiums. This is a real exposure that will not come back to budget. All other objects are at or below the targeted spending levels. Currently, the MDTA has sufficient liquidity in the near term to cover additional operating expenses associated with the Key Bridge collapse. However, we will continue to monitor those expenses in the coming weeks very carefully, and we do anticipate requesting a budget amendment for $60 million due to this collapse, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Moving on into the detail, the salaries and wages, Object 1 and 2 are at targeted spending levels with a 69% spend rate compared to a target of 72. Communications above budget at 80%. As mentioned before, this is due to the timing of a one-time invoice, so this will come back to budget. Travel is below budget at 42% spend rate. We do expect some additional spending the rest of the year, but there is potential savings in this object. Fuel and utilities is on budget with a 74% spend rate. Motor vehicle and operations, Object 7, is slightly below budget at 63%. The drivers are vehicle purchases, which is over budget at 87% spend, but this is the timing of deliveries around vehicles. Again, that will be back on budget. Gas and oil is below budget with a 35% spend rate. However, we do expect some savings as we budget at higher gas prices than we realize. So we are seeing gas prices starting to tick up again. All other major objects or sub-objects are at or below budget, and we do expect to be slightly below budget for some savings, primarily due to reduced repair costs. We have a lot more vehicles under warranty, so there's lower repair costs. Contractual services, Object 8 are below budget with a 47% spend rate. The key drivers are advertising, Object 801 at 36% spend rate, but we typically have higher public outreach activities in the third and fourth quarters, so we do expect this to come back closer to budget. Engineering is at a 48% spend rate. Again, typically much heavier in the third and fourth quarters. We're expecting this either to be on budget or slightly above. There is some exposure here for potential exposure in terms of expenses. Building repairs and maintenance, A12 is below at 40% due to, again, the timing of activity, but we do expect some savings around this. Education and training is below budget with a 37% spend rate. Again, timing, but some savings are expected, as well as the next object, we expect potential savings as well, which is Object 821, which is a 26% spend rate. These are the timing of when these studies occur throughout the year. IT-related costs, Objects 841 and 869 are showing below budget at 54% spend rate, but this is completely due to the timing of invoices, which we are aware of. We expect this to be on budget. Easy Pass Service Center costs, 873 is under budget at 41% spend, primarily due to delayed invoicing. We continue to monitor this, but we do expect this to come back very close to budget. Supplies and materials, Object 9 is at a 61% spend rate. The key drivers are roadway maintenance with a 56% spend rate, but a lot of the repairs and maintenance occur in the spring and summer months, so we expect this to come close back to budget. Salt is at 44% spend rate. That's pure savings. We had a milder winter than anticipated, while uniforms is at 85% spend rate. Again, it's timing when deliveries come in, but we do expect there's probably potentially some slight exposure in that line item. Transponders is below budget with 60%, but not very far below budget. We expect this to be very close to budget. Replacement equipment is above budget with 90% spend rate. The two drivers are replacement maintenance and building equipment, 1013. This is at 26% spend rate, but again, this is when we realize deliveries, and we're expecting some additional deliveries, so that will become close back to budget. And the replacement equipment, 1033, is above budget with 138% spend rate. This is the purchasing system error we mentioned that's in the process of being fixed. That was basically double counting some stuff, so that will come back to budget. Additional equipment is below budget with 42% spend rate. This is expected to be close to budget, as we do expect some additional deliveries, but again, it's still trending to be some potential savings in that object. Finally, fixed objects is over budget, and that's, as mentioned before, that's due to the insurance premiums you mentioned, and that is a true exposure. Moving into risk and opportunities, we have identified about $5 million of exposure, but that's primarily the insurance and premiums, and we fully expect to be offsetting those exposures with underspending in other categories. The big question mark, obviously, is the impact that the Key Bridge collapse will have on the operating budget. We do anticipate coming back to the budget to the board for an approval of a budget amendment for a cap of $60 million, and that's to handle the debris and salvage removal of the Key Bridge. That concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Member Von Paris?
I apologize for talking so much today. Maybe I had too much coffee, but Object 13 on the insurance, you mentioned that earlier, and then you just mentioned it again. It seems to me that this item and the insurance overall, our cost and insurance premiums present and going forward really needs some focus, strategy. I don't know, even seeking best practices throughout the country with some of our associates in tolling or in our same situation. This is not going to go away, and considering some of the things that recently happened here, like with the collapse of the bridge and everything, I think it just needs some kind of a focus and a group to evaluate it, in my opinion, but they're my comments. Thank you.
If I could just add, that's a department-wide issue, insurance, as you can imagine. So from a department-wide, we are taking a look at it. It's also an industry issue, across the country right now. So we're all sort of at the national level, where we're all working together, like, what can we do? How can we think about this differently? Just so you're aware of that. Any other questions?
Just real quick on the $60 million that we're going to see in June. Is that the $60 million that the feds have already provided to us, or is that another?
That's why we're capping it.
That's what I figured. Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood that. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned in projects 3 and 10, the purchasing system error. Can you, and there's a double counting, can you just shed a little more light on that, and also just confirm that there's no financial exposure related to that?
There's no exposure. It had to do, trying to remember all the details. We had a new PO system, Maximo, which was implemented, and that, with relations to our back-end financial systems dynamics, I believe there was some error. I don't know the details of the error, but there was some error that ultimately it got a double booking for something that should have been just booked once, it's the same amount. So it's not an exposure in terms of we owe that or anything, it's just purely a bookkeeping error in terms of how much we recognize due to the interaction of the two systems.
I want a little clarification on the $60 million. So what kinds of expenses was it? I know it was taking steel over to the trade from Atlantic and sorting through there. I mean, we must be spending a whole lot more than $60 million.
So, from a
That coming from another pocket, I guess, or?
From a financial statement perspective, the debris removal, emergency routes, everything associated with our costs not involved in the preliminary design, NEPA, final structure, any costs outside of those are considered operating expenses. That's what the $60 million is. Anything associated with preliminary design, NEPA, final design, construction, those expenses will be in the capital budget. So this is, I guess another way of maybe calling it is cleanup, that all that, collectively.
Yeah, I think the other part of the answer to your question, though, is also that we're responsible for the non-federal channel. The Army Corps is dealing with the navigation channel, so the expenses there are coming out of the federal budget directly. So that would be in addition to that. So that's why the number might seem small to you.
Any other questions or comments? Just one comment, just for just my simplicity. In the future, could we have the total number by object next to the object number? So I can get a sense of the percentage on what?
You mean within the narrative?
Yeah, just
say-
in the narrative,
say
just right next to.
Percentage or?
No, just right where it says like object 6, how much is object 6?
Okay.
20 million, 30 million, whatever it is.
What it
So-
was budgeted at?
Yeah, just so I can get a better perspective. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Item 12, third quarter capital budget comparison. Jennifer?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jennifer Stump. I'm the Assistant Capital Program Manager. Today, I am presenting the third quarter review of the fiscal year 2024 capital budget versus the actual spending as outlined in the fiscal year 24 to 29 draft CTP. This information was also presented to the Finance Committee earlier this month. As of March 31st, 2024, 40.7% of the fiscal year 24 $539.6 million budget was spent as compared to the targeted spending level of 75%. Actual spending through the third quarter was $219.6 million. 21 of the 83 projects budgeted in fiscal year 24 were within acceptable spending limits of 50 to 100%. This is plus or minus 25% of the 75% target. Due to normal lags in invoicing, a plus or minus 25% threshold was determined to be reasonable. Attachment A details 10 projects that were budgeted for more than $11 million each in fiscal year 24. Actual spending through the third quarter on these projects was $146.9 million. For risks and opportunities, due to the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge and the subsequent impact on traffic along I-895 and I-95, several projects in those regions may experience delays. These delays are intended to prevent further disruptions to traffic on these critical routes. The Office of Engineering and Construction is currently assessing these projects to determine their definitive impact on the fiscal year 24 spending. Interestingly, the reduced traffic around the I-695 Key Bridge area also presents an opportunity. It may allow us to expedite certain projects, potentially leading to an increase in spending during the fourth quarter of fiscal year 24. Notably, this includes the rehabilitation of Curtis Creek Drawbridge's superstructure and the FSK staging dock construction, both of which have been identified for consideration. This concludes the quarterly update, and please let me know if there's any questions or concerns.
Any questions or comments? Thank you so much. Agenda item number 13, quarterly update of traffic and revenue. Deborah? Ms. Sharpless?
Deb?
So on traffic and revenue, we
continue, sorry, we continue to do fairly well, particularly in Easy Pass area. And then we have the video toll side that is lagging behind. So when we look at the program as a whole, sorry, let me go too fast. When we look at the program as a whole, we are behind forecast by just under $3.5 million. And the, again, the contributor is Easy Pass. When we've talked about this in all the other quarterly message, it's the same message, it's the same theme, over and over again. On the Easy Pass side, whether we're talking about commercial or two-axle, traffic is strong. And as a result, we're exceeding the forecast. When we look on the video toll side, our number of transactions are consistent with what we forecasted. The average toll rate is what is consistent with what we forecasted. Our collection rate is lower than what was forecasted. And that's what's driving the underperformance there. This is something that we will continue to monitor. Also, because of the Key Bridge collapse, we've engaged CDM Smith to do an update letter. Whenever we have like a significant event, we will ask them to do an update outside of their normal 10-year forecast. The last time we had asked for an update letter was when COVID occurred. So now with the bridge collapse, we've asked for a similar letter. They will make adjustments. This underperformance that, is minor right now, right, 3.5 million, it's still a very, very good forecast. We're very, close overall, but this is not negatively impacting our ability to meet our financial coverage.
When does that letter due, or when will they get back to us on the forecast, revised forecast?
We're expecting the final letter to be issued any day now.
Okay.
We have reviewed drafts. We have gone back and forth with them. As part of the letter, they did two things. One is they re-benchmarked us to make these adjustments, and then also the impact from the Francis Scott Key Bridge. So, easily within the week, we expect the letter to be sent to us.
Yeah, and that's what finance needs for the June updates to the board for the financial plan.
Yes. Thank you. Any other questions?
Just, I guess it bothers me every time I hear it, but the fact that people still aren't paying their tolls, below NOTD and the CCU, what can we do?
It's challenging, like, from like a national perspective, right? That's where all the conversations happen about national interoperability. So that an Easy Pass transponder account is accepted outside of Easy Pass agencies. They're accepted in Oklahoma and Texas and Denver, or Colorado, I should say. And the same thing, where their accounts are accepted here. There's a lot of effort going on in order to make that happen. It's in the foreseeable future. That's one strategy, because sometimes when a truck or a passenger vehicle is traveling through Maryland, because of the interstates and the size of our state, we have a lot of through traffic. So they may not have an Easy Pass account, but where they live, they do have a toll account. Things like that will help us.
If I could add, this is one of the priority areas that I have coming in. Fortunately, with legislative session and the Key Bridge, it hasn't been one that we've been able to dig into as a team. I think the upcoming IBTTA summit or finance conference is going to allow kind of us to kind of re-engage with our peers. Deb's very much engaged in that. I haven't had the opportunity yet. So this summer is, for my purposes, is a heavy focus on this because it's really something we need to figure out sooner rather than later. Even though it is a challenge, it's like Deb has said, and there's lots of components to it. It's something that I think I promised the Secretary I'd address coming in. So just wanted to make sure you were aware that, that's something that, hopefully getting some of these major things in the works for us, do the catastrophe and getting back to that core business, because that is a core business function for us.
Well, one additional thing that we are doing is a lot of analytics. We have work set up with CDM Smith. It's underway now, where we're trying to answer the whys behind things. How much does the number of notices in a mailing impact collection rate? Are there certain areas? So that we can just understand better, is there anything else that we need to do? Is there a different approach? So that analysis is also going on and will be shared across the agency to have strategies.
Any other questions?
Just one question. In your attachment C, where in the reconciliation, so the video toll CCU collections are lower than forecasted 6.1, and that's one time. So does that mean CCU is exhausting their efforts related to those monies and are being written off?
In the forecast, there was assumptions about some timing as to when things would be at CCU and tied to the backlog, and some of those things didn't happen exactly in the time frame that we anticipated. So when something's marked as one time, we're saying that it's affecting this forecast, but not anticipated to impact future forecasts. And that's what's meant by there. So there's been some delays with CCU.
And we recently, from the operations perspective, we recently have been in several meetings with them to kind of re-engage, update, assumptions about letters, what they can process, what we can do to assist their processing, and have, recently turned over, a fairly significant batch to them. So that should be improved. Like Deb's saying, it should be one time, it should be improving for them, but it's, constantly having to keep up to date with them.
I guess I got to ask another question, and maybe it's because my memory's not good. Didn't we approve as a board a collection agency at one time to bypass the CCU?
For out-of-state collections.
That was for out-of-state, that's right.
We did. And
is it
there's
effective?
been numerous priorities, and that is also, an item that we need to circle back to and advance.
With an
So we actually haven't been
Right.
doing it. Got it. Okay.
Good. Any other questions? Right. Thank you, Deborah.
Sorry.
That's right. Agenda item number 14, CTP process and additions. Jennifer?
Good morning again.
Morning.
For the record,
Jennifer, make sure you lean into that closely. It's not picking up, I don't think. Yeah. Thanks.
I am Jennifer Stump, the Assistant Capital Program Manager. Today, I'm presenting the Consolidated Transportation Program, the CTP process and additions. This information was also presented to the Capital Committee on May 2nd. Each year, the Maryland Transportation Authority releases the CTP, which presents MDTA's ongoing and new capital projects for a 6-year rolling period. The draft CTP is presented to the board in June of each year for approval, and following that is presented to local elected officials and citizens throughout Maryland for review and comment. It is then revised and presented as the final CTP and presented to the board in November for approval to be part of the governor's budget to the Maryland General Assembly in January. The CTP is separated into 3 parts: the construction program major projects, the development and evaluation program major projects, and system preservation minor projects. Major capital projects are listed individually. Minor projects are grouped and shown by category of work. The construction program major projects and system preservation minor projects programs include ongoing projects and those projects scheduled to begin construction within the 6-year period. The D&E program contains those major projects which are being prepared for possible future addition to the construction program. projects are moved from the D&E program to the construction program as funds and resources become available based on the merits of the projects. For project selection, MDTA's capital projects originate from a variety of sources. Long-range capital needs, which includes planned rehabilitation or replacement projects based on life cycle. The expected useful life of a component does not provide an exact rehabilitation or replacement date, but gives an idea of when MDTA should begin planning and budgeting to address it. Inspection findings are used in tandem with life cycle estimates to confirm rehabilitation or replacement is necessary as scheduled or to expedite a project when it is needed ahead of schedule. Regulatory compliance includes projects for EPA mandated stormwater management, increased capacity needs based on traffic forecast recommendations, local priority letters and legislative requests established each year as Maryland counties and Baltimore City are asked to submit a list of priorities for the state transportation system. Once identified, projects are prioritized based on customer needs for safety and security or increased capacity through improvements or system preservation. Funding availability to budget for identified projects is based on MDTA's 6-year financial forecast, which considers estimates of traffic and revenue prepared annually, the operating budget and capital budget, debt service payments, the potential need for future bond sales and toll increases, and compliance with financial standards. The fiscal year 25 to 30 draft CTP is to be presented for approval in June and includes 13 new projects detailed in Attachment A. For the new projects added, we have the maintenance and repair of Curtis Creek Drawbridge, the rehabilitation of Curtis Creek Drawbridge Basco Piers, update the phone system to NEC SV 9500 Phase 2, replace I-895 bridge over Lombard Avenue, resurface northbound and southbound I-95 from Tidings Bridge to Maryland 24 interchange, miscellaneous structural repairs inside the Fort McHenry Tunnel, on-call miscellaneous paving repairs, Bay Bridge Queue Detection System Phase 2, pier protection system at the Bay Bridges, FMT maintenance, building renovation, FSK Building 305 roof HVAC and windows replacement, portable radio replacement, and replace the Francis Scott Key Bridge. This concludes the presentation for process and additions. If there's any questions or concerns.
Any questions?
Chairman,
Mr. Cox?
I know it's your favorite time of the year, September to November, making the rounds along with the deputy secretary and all of the department heads and heads of each agency, and going to the General Assembly, obviously, in January. I know it's a very fun time for you, Mr. Secretary and Deputy Secretary. I mean, all the department heads. I mean, it's and I guess in stating, I mean, obviously going back in time a little bit when I was a little bit more involved in another time, so to speak. But you anticipate, obviously, with the Key Bridge and all the other ancillaries that are happening in between, and obviously the presentation you made to the General Assembly and the aftermath. What do you think of not only this, but all your agencies? What do you think is going to happen with CTP? I know we haven't approved it yet, but in time.
Sure. Actually, those are very valuable. I mean, the CTP tour is, yes, it does take time, but it's very valuable to hear directly from basically a lot of the stakeholders and citizens. So it's a very valuable tool to us. As you may recall, there was a train commission that was established last year that basically has been, in effect, brought to a closure, but there is another group that's getting together. It's actually two groups to deal with some of the larger financial issues, which will play into the overall department issues. The Key Bridge is on a different track, obviously, with the federal government, where we're spending a lot, and we'll be getting into that in a moment. So that's on a separate track in terms of the funding of that. But overall, the department continues to be under a lot of stress, given the factors we've talked about before, inflation, the needs, and the elimination of the COVID funds that we're using to support the two major transit systems. So all that's still there. We did get an infusion of dollars, which allowed us to deal with some of the issues, but the much larger issue, the systemic issue, still needs to be addressed, and will be through those two groups that I mentioned earlier.
Thank you.
Mhm. Member Rosen?
Just, this is probably too early and probably premature even to talk about, but, there's the additional impact on our existing infrastructure from the diversion around FSK, certainly while it's being rebuilt. Do we anticipate that that's going to accelerate the need for additional capital needs for the tunnels that are now experiencing increased volume relative to what we would have expected otherwise?
If I could suggest, Jim, and I take that on the next, or one of the next agenda items, since rather than Jennifer, is that, yeah.
And if I could just add, and it's, again, not just a Transportation Authority issue, it's a state highway issue as well, obviously with 695, because the implications of that, particularly with oversized loads and things of that sort, will be used in those facilities. So it is a complicated system for sure. One question on the on-call miscellaneous repair. So is that an annual, in effect, ask? Is there something new here?
It's not necessarily annual, but it is a repeating
Oh,
maintenance
repeated, yeah,
contract that
that's what I'm
goes on.
assuming.
It's, I mean, it's
Okay.
usually more than just a year long, but they do
Okay. So
replace
this
it
is just the
whenever.
time in the cycle where this is coming up. Okay, just making sure.
Is vehemently shaking his head.
Yeah, okay, I was just making sure that there wasn't something else there. Okay, very good. Anything else? Any other questions? All right, thank you so much, Jennifer. All right, the next agenda item is the Francis Scott Key Bridge update. Mr. Gardner and Jim?
No.
Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Bruce Gartner, Executive Director, with Jim Harkness, our Chief Engineer. Before diving into the remarks and covering some of the topics, I just wanted to acknowledge that this has been a tremendous effort. It was referenced before, both the federal government, our crews that Jim has been managing, local partners on this. So it continues, as you've heard in the press, that we still have a little bit more to do, even though there's been incredible, great news in terms of opening the shipping channel, the port back up. So we want to today cover briefly salvage, traffic issues, and the process for environmental assessment, procurement, engagement with the industry and the community on that. So I'm going to let Jim go into the salvage efforts, since he's been living and breathing that. But I will it's been good to see that his time cards are now more like our normal person's time cards instead of two people. So I'll just leave it at that and let him talk about salvage.
All right, thanks, Bruce. Good morning, everyone. So I'm stating the obvious here, but since our last board meeting, there's been a lot of activity happening out on the river. And one of those things is in late April, we were able to open a portion of the main channel temporarily at a width of 300 feet by 38 feet. That opening allowed for some of the ships that had been stuck inside the port since March 26th to leave the port. It also allowed for some additional ships to enter the port, so effectively, again, restoring some commerce to Baltimore. And then by the end of the month of May, the 4 channels that we had temporarily been able to open provided for more than 500 transits, which included things from sugar, paper, aluminum, and even some small container vessels. On Monday, May 13th, the salvage team that was responsible for clearing the Dolly vessel itself performed a controlled blasting operation on the truss section that was resting on the vessel. This operation was very similar to what we had performed down at the Nice Bridge as part of the truss demolition for that project. The blast was successful, removing the vast majority of the steel truss from the vessel. It left only small portions of truss that needed to be removed before the vessel could be refloated and moved to berth. So that took about a week to get those plans in place, and then on Monday, May 20th, the Dolly was
successfully refloated and returned back to Seagirt Terminal, where that salvage team is now working on removing the portions of the concrete deck, which are all now off and onto a barge. And then still there remains the steel structure that was underneath the deck, as well as portions of the pier that actually collapsed onto the vessel. So they are working to remove those as well. So a few days after the refloat, we were able to successfully reopen the main channel to a width of 400 feet now out of the total 700, and a depth of 50 feet, which essentially meant that the Port of Baltimore was reopened. Any ship that had previously called on the port was able to now call on the port again, given those dimensions of the channel. So for our contractor team, Skanska, they continue to work on clearing portions of the channels outside of portions of the wreckage outside of the federal channel. So they're 90%, I would say, through that steel that remained outside of the federal channel. They are also, of course, continuing to process steel at the processing yard, processing concrete as well. So that deck that came off of the vessel is going to be brought over and be processed. The work in the main channel that's getting the rest of that truss section out of there, that is also coming over to their yard. To date, they have received more than 18,000 tons of steel at the yard, and they have processed through the yard more than 10,000 tons. So that 8,000 so tons remains in the yard, but in various states of processing. I guess the Army Corps expects to have the full channel reopened, the 700 foot by 50 foot, by June 8th, 10th, around there. And then they just have some minor cleanup to stuff that's below the mud line that will continue for another week or so. Our anticipation is that we'll be able to wrap up the processing yard near the end of June, maybe early July. That's all I have.
Turning to other efforts, as you can imagine, as you've seen, as you've experienced, the traffic in the region with the 39,000 daily trips of the Key Bridge diverting to other places is something that we have to work as a team with MDOT and with the locals to monitor. We have been doing that on a constant basis with the intent to get really kind of granular on that in the next month, and reporting out to Federal Highways on some of the things that we see as true trend lines. Early on, things were moving around on us. You had very dynamic conditions. In the coming month, with the port opening up, you'll see that port traffic being into the mix now, so we really have to be prepared for that. It's been a topic in Congress just to highlight the importance of the bridge to the national system, to the East Coast system. So we will be working with our colleagues to not only monitor, but to suggest improvements. We need to keep the public informed. We've been increasing our efforts in that. And without the ability to, immediately add lanes to the situation, we really have to encourage travelers, businesses to help their employees to think about alternative times, alternative routes, transit, carpooling. There are different incentive programs that the region has in place, and we've been really working closely with MDOT and the locals to put those programs into place. Couple things that did happen in May. On the 20th, when the ship was removed, we did open up that turnaround at the Key Bridge, which allows that movement from Broning Highway to and from Broning Highway to the 695 towards Trade Point Atlantic. So that is no tolling is in effect at that time. We'll be coming back to you with a longer-term recommendation on that. It's, I think, been vital for the community to have that movement in place and to facilitate keeping some trucks out of the community. Also making adjustments to the harbor tunnels, as I think we talked about last time, continue to monitor that. It seems to be going well at the toll plaza, particularly northbound, to smooth some things out there. So just a lot of coordination and work that will need to continue in the short term, but also for the next 4 years. moving on to where we stand with our environmental evaluations, the team is working closely with Federal Highways on a weekly, almost daily basis to advance different permits, talks with the Coast Guard, so we should have those in place by the time we need to be working on the design for the project this summer once we get a consultant on board. So that seems to be going fairly well with the assistance of the federal government. On the RFP, so we've mentioned before and in the news repeatedly that the goal was to get this RFP out for the progressive design build by the end of the month. Tomorrow is the end of the month, so that is still our plan to release that RFP this week. Have a few more things to just make sure are in order for that, but it's been a great effort. Really appreciate, again, the assistance of Federal Highways on that, legal counsel, procurement, engineering, to pull that together. The industry forum that we had, I think was referenced before, but it really put the word out there for the industry on May 7th, had over 400 questions, all responded to in one way or another shortly after that. But to remind you of the process here is selecting a firm after the advertisement period, so that'll be in late July. And once we get a team on, I shouldn't say a firm, once we get a team on board, going through a phase one, which includes that as preliminary design tasks. And then with phase two, it involves finalizing design, developing various work packages, beginning construction. So those this process has been used at state highways. We've had experience similar to it on the with CMAR, construction management at risk. So there's been a good experience with the team in doing these types of things, but it is new. Moving on to community engagement, we've with the industry, the outreach to them proved that those virtual sessions can be helpful. We are planning for community engagement in early June, second week of June, so we're working on plans for that. Really appreciate Cheryl Sparks kind of taking that, working with various offices within MDTA and MDOT to make sure we're going to be prepared to touch base with the communities impacted by this bridge. We don't know the design of the bridge. They don't know the design of the bridge. We need to be out there in the community talking to them, making sure they understand what our plans are, developing engagement priorities with them so that they can have their input and feel heard, because this is a significant feature of their community, and they've been cut off, and they will be cut off for years to come. So that's a high priority for us, and we'll be asking questions to them. We'll be preparing to reach out to them at various farmers markets and go to the community over the summer too. So it's not just about a one and done event, it's about continual engagement with them to make sure they know how our process is going. It's just to get input from them. So that is essentially what we've been working on to date and have in our near-term plans.
Any questions for Jim?
When we were out there observing all the work, I was told that the part of the bridge that's still standing was going to be taken down. I'm just wondering how that fits in the whole thing. Is that going to be done by the existing demo group or the new team?
So that hasn't been determined yet. It's the intention is that it's the new team. We have to do some final work on that, but I'll let Jim kind of talk about that existing.
Yeah, so that we're working through the NEPA process obviously still, so that's something that we're going to be determining through NEPA, and then it is our intention that we would be able to do that, and we just need to finalize that with the NEPA process.
More of a comment. I just want to congratulate you all on the progress. We meet monthly, so you've done so much in terms of opening that channel up for the port to have business, which is a key economic generator for our state and our country. So I just want to congratulate you, and I know that you'll make even more progress before our next meeting.
Thanks.
If I could, I just, obviously, Bruce, all the effort that you've been doing, but Jim, as you know, Jim is a member of the Unified Command. He basically has become a maritime engineer at the same time, because he's been carrying so much for the port, obviously work with the port. But he has been the go-to person for anything related to any of the state aspects of this project. And I've heard repeatedly from both the general and the admiral that we could not be as far along as we have come without his efforts. So thank you so much, Jim.
Agreed.
Appreciate it. Okay, agenda item number 16, HR committee updates. Member Gaines.
Yeah. We had the last HR committee meeting on May 7th, and really we heard, which you've all heard, that the HR committee is going to be merged into the finance committee to form the new finance and administration committee, which I think we're all on board with. So in the interests of efficiency, and so that's very good. Before we totally ended the HR committee, I did want to say this group has a lot of talented people, and they're always trying new ideas to educate and improve the skills of our employees. Director Tanya Dorsey has her finger on the pulse of everything going on there, and is a very strong leader. And I'm sorry Percy's not here, but he also has a great feel what's happening in the HR department and all of MTA as far as that goes. So if you've got a question on anything on HR, either Tanya or Percy will answer it right away. So we've enjoyed working with both of them. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Gaines? Again, thank you, sir, for leading that effort. All right, agenda item number 17, the Executive Director's Report. Mr. Gardner?
Yes, before I start that, I just want to thank you, Chairman Gaines, and the members of the HR committee for the service that you've done for that and those quarterly meetings. So, and appreciate the move to streamline the operations. But I'd echo your comments about our HR team internally. Thank you for that. So, with everything going on in the Key Bridge, we are still have been firmly put into the summer travel season with the unofficial start of summer and Memorial Day weekend. So we have, prior to that, re-engaged on those travel messages that you see, both from a safety standpoint and making sure our customers are reminded about the best times to travel. We're doing e-blast to our 1 million Easy Pass customers related to the Key Bridge to remind them of what they can do. That commuter options are available, commuter plans are available there if they weren't using them before, to really think through that. There's tips on those for account maintenance and everything else, and we really do want to still drive up that Easy Pass percentage because of the various challenges. We're just doing them in kind of some newer ways this summer. We are also been focused on customer service, employee engagement and recognition over the past month. We had several events that I just wanted to review here today, but on April 22nd, for those of you up in the Elkton area, we did open up a new service center in the Elkton Motor Vehicle Administration. So that's our second location in Cecil County, the other one being in Perryville. And so that work has continued. For Memorial Day, again, it's a challenging time at the Bay Bridge, just getting the message out. We also have the safety component that I mentioned that Chief Scott was working closely with his folks. I think I've missed the fact that we appointed you in the midst of this, didn't I? I've been reading through this and I'm like, well, wait a second. There is the fact that we have a new chief of police, and I'm like sitting here going, yes. I think it's because we've become so comfortable with the chief as he was acting. So let me just pause for a second and say, thank you to the gentleman that has taken over the position as chief of MDTA Police, standing in the back of the room. But he's hit the ground running, an enforcement effort. So if you just pause on that. And my apologies. So is everything going? See, I was just like, he's been there the whole time. But you know, the enforcement of the traffic laws of that lane, the Red X lane down at the Bay Bridge, that many of the locals are concerned about how people are using that. So they had a very good enforcement effort over the week before the Bay Bridge, or the Memorial Day weekend at the Bay Bridge. They conducted about almost 200 traffic stops and well over 200 combined citations, warning, repair orders, et cetera. So that is something that we need to do periodically. It's hard to staff up for that all the time, but those events really help send the message out about safety and safe driving at our key facilities. So the Bay Bridge travel campaign, you know, continue to use billboards, and the communications team, marketing team has been all over that, and we really appreciate those efforts to get the word out about know before you go and checking on traffic conditions. Another big event, May 22nd, we had our annual rodeo and awards presentation. So just the effort that we want to take to recognize our employees, to keep them engaged with each other. I wasn't here during the pandemic, but you know, was continued to be in the workforce and know how challenging it was for people not to see each other on a kind of regular basis. And the fact that this rodeo and annual awards event has been put together over the past few years, it was an incredible event. I had to leave a little bit early because of another obligation, but I had the most productive 15 to 20 minute meetings with about 10 staff on different topics at that event, and I think there were many others that had that same experience as we all got to engage with each other. We were able to recognize several annual award winners, their Rising Star, Supervisor of the Year, Award of Excellence, Lifetime Achievement, some team awards. I'll have the names of those in the record for the minutes for you all, but I just appreciate the efforts taken by Natalie and Ebony and Mary and the rest of the team, Scott Stills from operations, to put that event on. It was highly successful. Thank you, Member Cox, for being there with us to represent the board. I think we had a few tweaks that we'll do for next year, but turned into a great event. So there's also an expo area that we had for that event so that the different offices could showcase what they're doing. So things like asset management, risk management, our HR, the diversity and equity programs, they're all important to the rest of the employees. They don't always get to see emails. They got to engage with staff at that. So that was very useful for everyone as well. Last thing I'd like to do is recognize the Employee of the Quarter, which we typically do at these meetings. Without revealing a name up front, I will say that this employee for quarter one started with MDTA contractually and became a permanent employee in 2017, July of 2017. About a year ago, the recipient became a lead account specialist. Since then, she has shown true leadership qualities. The employee has spearheaded a tag swap program by creating tools to assist her and her team to be as efficient as possible. The employee is a team player and is open to suggestions from the team and often implements them. Our Employee of the Quarter always rises to the challenge. This employee has been instrumental throughout our transition to TransCore and verifying documents which have been translated into Spanish. This employee takes on extra tasks assigned by management and works with their team to produce the best outcome for customers and the MDTA. It has been said that the employee often puts their own priorities on hold to ensure the success of the group, and has been described as a true great asset to the Easy Pass office. I want to thank Michelle Reherd for nominating this individual. Please help me in congratulating and recognizing Nairobi Sanchez as the 2024 Employee of the First Quarter. So I think afterwards I'd like to get the board together for a picture with Nairobi, but thank you. You're a good example to all of us, no matter where we sit in the organization, so thank you. Just to look forward, I mentioned this previously, but from June 9th to 11th, we have our Finance and Road User Charging Summit for IBTTA that we're hosting here in Baltimore. Deb Sharpless has served as one of the chief meeting organizers for this event in the midst of everything else that she's doing. So really appreciate her doing that and keeping us integrated into the IBTTA organization. So with that, I think I will turn it back over to the chairman.
Any questions or discussion?
I just, I guess it's probably my third or fourth year being to the rodeo, and the interaction with the employees is just fantastic. I'm telling you, the enthusiasm I saw this year, a couple of years, not as much, but this year I thought was just fantastic. I know with obviously with Natalie and Mary and Ebony and the group, it just worked well. Thank you.
What place did you come in the rodeo?
Is last.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, sir. All right, at this point, right, the agenda item is complete. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. This concludes the meeting, the MDTA board meeting at approximately 10:36. Thank you.